On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, that's a Scottie Barnes you can believe in.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey! What's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, January the 22nd, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can also join us over in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. You can follow the show on Instagram as well. The Discord is free to join, by the way. It's a great way to come hang out and not do work tasks throughout your day and steal company time. Please come and do that. Link in the description of the podcast. You can also join us in subscribing to the Locked On Raptors newsletter. It's 5 days a week to your inbox for the low price of On the House. You get original writing from me 5 days a week. Katie Heindel on the League at Large 4 times a week. Michael Shearer basketball poetry on Thursdays, and Josh Lloyd fantasy tips every single day. It's a great value proposition as it is free, and there's lots of good stuff in there. So please support the work, and it's very much appreciated if you've already done it. If you haven't yet, please do. All right. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Right now, you can download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're off and running here on your Wednesday edition of the show, talking about a Toronto Raptors 109-93 win over the Orlando Magic that started real ugly. They were down 21 in the first quarter and couldn't score, it seemed, a single point against the Orlando Magic, and yet turned it around with a really nice second quarter and third quarter, put it away late. And it just ended up being a nice, rollicking, comfortable Raptors victory with lots of fun, juicy morsels to dive into. And here to dive into said morsels, including the offense finding its groove against a very good defense, the good, the bad, the and of course, Scottie Barnes and his wonderful, all-encompassing performance. It is our pal, Vivek Jacob, Big V. How the hell are you, pal?
I'm doing great, especially after that win. Just an
man.
awesome game. It was looking ugly early. We were talking about that. We were going back and forth. And then it all turned. No,
Yeah, I think he texted me in the middle of the first quarter, and we were just kind of going over some plans for the show. And I said, great game we got to talk about here. And it turned out I was clairvoyant on that one. It was really fun. Let's start with Scottie Barnes, shall we? 17 points, 11 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, a block. Guarded Paolo Banchero for most of the night. Ends up going 6 of 13 from the field, 2 of 4 from downtown. It was, I think, kind of a perfect encapsulation of Scottie Barnes' all-encompassing impact as a star player, even when he doesn't go and score 25 plus, which I know a lot of people want to see him do. And eventually he's probably going to have to uptick the scoring to really kind of move into a different echelon of player. But he is just so impactful in all the different corners of the game, even when he's not scoring. I thought that was totally on display in this one. That's a Scottie Barnes you can bottle, and you can say, hey, like, do that all the time, and you're going to be in pretty good shape if you're the Raptors. That's the version of Scottie Barnes that I still think is in there that can be the best player on a good playoff team. Maybe not like an inter-tier contender or anything like that, but a good playoff team. Can he be an all-NBA player playing basketball like that down the line? 100% he can. Big V. Impressions from Scottie Barnes' big night. Again, not the sexiest overall stat line, but his fingerprints were all over this victory.
Yeah, man. I thought he was awesome. I think, obviously, after the first quarter, it was very quiet first. And I think the second quarter, once the momentum had kind of shifted, that's when I think Scottie came in and really took charge, was really assertive. And I thought for stretches was dominant. And to your point, it didn't have to be as a scorer. And just the way he was impacting the game, the way he was getting guys involved, the way he was defending. There were multiple times where Banchero tried to go right at him. And Scottie was able to force him into some really tough shots. And so I think that type of two-way impact is really special. And I think when you look at the spark that was initially provided by the bench for him to then sort of just take over and be like, okay, well, we've got this back now. We're not going to let go of the rope. We're going to keep pushing forward. And I thought really set the tone in the third quarter coming out to start the second half. I thought it was interesting. Ivo Simovic did the halftime interview,
Yeah.
and he was just flat out like, "Yeah, we did not play hard enough in that first quarter,"
Mhm.
and he was pretty adamant about that. So I think the coaching staff would have been pretty stern about that in the team talk, and I think Scottie led the charge in making sure that wasn't the case to start the third quarter.
Yeah, that was a stinky first quarter, no doubt. They really seem to have no ideas trying to carve open that Magic defense, which even with all the injuries the Magic are dealing with, and no Jalen Suggs, neither of the Wagners, like they're not the same team, but they're still a damn good defense. It's their offense that really, really is cratering right now. Without their star guys and just like the full complement of players that they need to just scrape by barely on offense on a good day, the defense is still legit, and we'll get into the offense and how it ran well. But yeah, in that first quarter, it very much did not. It was nice to see Scottie just kind of, it seemed like he kind of figured it out as time went along. It seemed the first quarter like there was just this sort of molasses energy to the way they were trying to run stuff. They weren't really, and like, just like lazy passing and stuff like that was getting picked off and scored at the other end too. But yeah, like you get into that second quarter, third quarter stretch, and Scottie just kind of like those games where every single possession on either end of the floor, it seems like he's doing something helpful, whether it's a good defensive rotation or an individual stop or a block on the other end, a nice pass to pass a guy open, or obviously going and finding his own. Like he'll have these spurts of games where he just is everything all the time. And that's been the biggest frustration, I think, over the years with Scottie, is he doesn't quite string those games together, those quarters together the way you might want to. But I do think this season, as much as it's been kind of an up and down ride and there have been some pretty low lows for him, I do think on the whole, we're seeing that sort of impactful play more regularly and for longer sustained stretches this year. And I want to ask you this question. We talked a little bit about this, maybe in not these specific terms, last week with Katie Heindel as we were going through our favorite parts of the first half of the season. And I had Scottie Barnes on there because I thought his development, as much as it's maybe not working from 3-point range, I think a lot of the other elements of his game are improving. Do you think Scottie Barnes is a better basketball player this year than he was last year? It's kind of an important question for the Raptors and their long-term outlook. It's looked different. Obviously, the threes aren't falling, but is Scottie Barnes better? What do you think?
I think Scottie Barnes for sure is a better player. I think he's improved in ways that are important as, a playoff performer, as,
Mhm.
uh, kind of approaching that top tier of players. And I think when you look at the mid range development, I think that's a really, really big one for me. When you look at the fact that he was shooting 39% last year from the short mid range, 4 to 14 feet. Now that's up to 48%. I think that's a significant improvement. I think the comfort he's shown in going to that shot
Mhm.
shows the confidence he has in it. He's shooting a career best 75% at the rim. I think that is really, really important too. And then I think overall, too, when you look at it from a leadership standpoint,
Mhm.
last year we saw that there were areas he was definitely going to have to work on, and understandably so. That, like, this is his first full season with the keys to the franchise,
Mhm.
and I think there have been important moments where he has come out and said the right things, and then he's come out and played the right way as well. And uh, I think obviously that Boston game stands out, and sort of the release of all the frustration of losing, and kind of the way Boston has beat up on them, the way Boston won that double OT thriller. They talked about feeling like they owed them one,
Mhm.
and he kind of led from the front in that regard. So I do think that from a leadership standpoint, I feel much more confident in him now than I did uh, last season.
Say at the end of that Thunder game in February last year,
Yeah,
which I do think, like, we talked about it in the summer, and I think it's kind of a bit of a turning point for him a little bit. And look, there's still the moments of immaturity. There's still the moments
yeah,
where, he kind of, there's too many like ref theatrics sometimes with him and whatnot.
for
But yeah,
sure.
in general, I do think you're totally on the money there. Like the stuff that really matters. Yeah, the 3-point shooting's not been great. If you look just at that and the fact that he's down 0.1 points per game in scoring, you might say, oh, he's not actually a better player. What's going on here? What are these jokers talking about? But if you look under the hood, you mentioned the mid range shooting. I mean, the jump he's made from 10 to 16 feet is ridiculous. He shot 29.7% from 10 to 16 feet last year per Basketball Reference. This year, 54.8%. That's incredible. And that's the range that stars have to live. And, the long mid-range stuff maybe isn't going as much, but he doesn't have to lean on the long mid-range because he can get to his office of 12, 14 feet basically anytime he wants. And so, he's working in counters off of that. I think the playmaking out of those post-ups and those sort of back downs has gotten a lot sharper after, maybe as he was first figuring out this range as a bit of a place he can operate. He was a little tunnel visioned. He wasn't passing too much out of those. But that's coming now. And yeah, it's just an all-encompassing, more effective player. The defensive leap, I think, has been pretty substantial overall, too. And yeah, it's these are the types of games that make you really believe Scottie Barnes is the real deal that, the Raptors were totally right to bet on in building the whole team around. Of course, the supporting cast needs to work itself out, too. But the supporting cast was damn good last night. We're going to get into the offense coming up next, where it was one of the better and cleaner offensive games they've played all year against a very good and nasty Magic defense, a defense that just a couple of weeks ago totally stymied them. We're going to get into how the offense got their groove back coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the sporting events that you want to go to. And it's not just sports. You got concerts, you got theater shows, you got comedy. It's all there for you. And nothing like a live event to go find some nice, fun memories for you. A lot of my very favorite times have been at sporting events with friends or at concerts with pals, all that stuff. It's a wonderful thing. And Game Time helps you create those memories for less money flat out. They have Game Time Picks, which is a super great function. It just filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on the seats that you might want to sit in for the events you want to go to. And as you get closer to game time, the tickets are going to get cheaper as well. I've told this story before, but a couple summers ago, I was in Seattle with my wife, and we were outside the arena where the Seattle Storm play in the WNBA. And we were just like, why don't we go to the game? They're playing in 20 minutes. Let's hop in. And we bought tickets at the door for like $6. It was wonderful. They were great lower bowl seats. Got to, sit around some season ticket holders. It was a beautiful thing. You can go and do it as well at Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time, of course. Back at it here with Big V, Vivek Jacob from Raptors in 7, his wonderful Substack newsletter. He's also writing at Sportsnet and Sportscasting. He's doing cricket commentary. He's all over the damn place, but he is here today as we continue to talk about the Raptors taking down the Magic 109-93 in a game where the offense was humming, baby. And look, again, I know the Magic are hurt and they're missing a lot of their guys, but the defensive integrity of that team remains very strong. I also understand Jonathan Isaac left this game early on with illness, and so they didn't have maybe their best per-minute defender, maybe the league's best per-minute defender out there. But still, the Magic defense is no joke, and they are not terribly easy to carve apart, as we saw in that first quarter where the Raptors had nothing going. But I thought in this game, Big V, the Raptors really found Darko ball energy. And I thought the way they were moving, the cutting, the sort of ways in which they attacked different kinds of defense, right? There were stretches where they totally brutalized the Magic zone. There were times where they really took advantage of, Gradey Dick's off-ball energy and sort of guys playing super close to him and cutting off of that. I thought Kelly Olynyk, who we'll talk about, was fantastic in this game and really breathed a lot of space and life into the offense when he was on the floor as well. This was as impressive an offensive game as I think they've played in quite some time. A 113 half-court offensive rating for the Raptors in this one. Very good against 90th percentile, that is, over the course of the season. That's huge against the number 7 half-court defense in the NBA per clean the glass. What were your impressions of the Raptors offense in this one? It was fun to watch them play crisp, beautiful ball.
Exactly. I think, this is one of those I see the vision games. If you want to, put it on a tape and say, hey, what's Darko about? What is the vision? This is the vision. I think, when you look at the half court offense, I think that's the thing that stands out the most. We talk about this team and their struggles to maybe create as many advantages just in terms of shot creation and having to sort of force that with ball movement and player movement. This is where you were able to really see that come to fruition. And I think a lot of it, frankly, came down to just that sharpness, that focus, that intensity that they were bringing, right? And I think there was a purposeful intent with everything they were doing. And I
Yeah.
think, you mentioned the zone, like when Scottie was at the nail, the way guys were cutting, the way guys were moving for him. You look at, even when Kelly's outside and he's able to just like tell guys to move, and he kind of orchestrates the offense in a beautiful way.
The Kelly
Uh,
Olynyk aggressive head bob to try to get a guy to move.
yeah.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and I think the RJ kind of, when the offense is moving like this, it makes it easier for him too, because he's able to
Mhm,
cut into those gaps easier, and then there's just these constant driving lanes that he's able to just take full advantage of.
mhm.
And then Gradey shooting with confidence, that helps a lot too.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, RJ and Grady, I thought in this game, like the absolute benefactors of Darko ball, right? And the stuff that all the actions that go into getting those guys loose towards the rim or from the 3-point line. Grady obviously a little more towards the threes. And I think, the Raptors, you could say, hell, they got some shooting variance luck in this one. And certainly the shooting variance fairy was pretty sprinkling some pixie dust down on the Raptors. And the Magic had a pretty rough one after starting 5 of 5. They finished 9 of 31 in this game. The Raptors go 13 of 24. Jamal Shed hits a couple, or 3 of them? Yeah, 2. No, he was 2 of 3 from downtown. You get Bruce Brown going 2 of 3. Kelly goes 2 of 2. Barrett goes 2 of 3. Like, these guys all kind of shooting above their heads a little bit in a super tiny sample. But I think the way they were creating stuff, kind of went into the ease of the looks that they were getting. And they also shot at the rim a ton in this game. They shot 44% of their looks at the rim, a 94th percentile rim frequency in any game this season per clean the glass across the league. That's huge. And they shot 73% at the rim too. So it wasn't just that they subsisted off of warmer than usual shooting. Their volume was crazy low in this game. They only took 24 threes. That they went down is really great. But I think the general process of the offense was also kind of part of why they had such great results. We're going to play a quick game of What Sound Did You Make? Our favorite onomatopoeic game here on the podcast. Gradey Dick, my goodness, drives in from the left corner and completely yams on Tristan da Silva. For my money, the dunk of the season, even over the Bruno Fernando on Giannis dunk. I don't know. Maybe I was just feeling this game more than that damn Bucks game earlier in the season, but this one just got me going. So I have to ask you, Big V, in the grand tradition of this podcast, what sound did you make when Grady threw down the Thunder?
Oh,
Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. I was on mine end. It was a wife, watch this. Wife, watch this. That was me. As my wife was sitting there watching a show, and I forced her to pause it so I could rewind and show her the cool dunk. She definitely appreciated it as much as I did. Yeah, great stuff from Grady in this one. His best game in a while, I'd say. 17 points, 6 of 9, 2 of 4 from 3. And, he had a couple nice ones last week, too, where he just kind of looked exactly as his intended, sort of his role within the offense. This, like, really excellent 4th or 5th offensive option who is creating all kinds of space for others with his movement, with his gravity and all of that. A really nice one here. And Kelly Olynyk, we should probably talk about him a little bit too. We're going to get into some of the crazy numbers that he put up in this one, in particular in the on-off category a little later on in the show. But Kelly Olynyk plays 22 minutes in this game. Jakob Poeltl deals with some foul trouble and just kind of, not a great Jakob Poeltl game in general. And Kelly Olynyk comes in and just is this agent for space and passing and movement and zone busting. He was freaking awesome. This has to be one of his better games as a Raptor, if not his best overall. And it does look like he's kind of found himself here over the last little while. He's shaken off the back pain and is, inspiring 30 somethings with their own back pain everywhere. Your impressions of Kelly in this one? He was fantastic. Usually when Poeltl's in trouble and it's a lot of Kelly Olynyk minutes, it's like, this is going to be a long one. But, even with some issues, defensive rebounding and stuff like that, I thought he was bloody fantastic in his 12, 3 and 3 on 4 of 6 line.
yeah, for sure. And I think it kind of helps for him to go up against a team that is struggling offensively and isn't going to,
Yeah.
do as much damage as you'd think going up
Mhm.
against him. So I think that element obviously helps. And I think that's where, when I watch Jakob Poeltl's minutes, and this is kind of a game where you need someone in that position to just really be creating more advantages. And I thought
Mhm.
in this type of situation, you had Kelly who can space the floor. You had Kelly who isn't gonna shy away from opportunities inside. And I thought Yak was just a little bit hesitant in this one. You know, or 82 games, you're gonna have nights where you're
Sure.
not quite feeling it or whatever it might be. I think we were messaging back and forth, and there was a possession where Tristan da Silva got switched onto him, and then Yak just like tried to post him up once and then just kicked it out, and I was like, "Come on, man." So that was one of those, and I think with Kelly, when he's able to move the ball well, when he's able to shoot the ball well, that's the Captain Canada stuff that we love to
Yeah.
see.
And I know we're talking about offense here, but Kelly Olynyk had 4 blocks in this game. 4 blocks.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
What? Crazy stuff. We will get into Kelly Olynyk's ridiculous on-off numbers. We're also going to get into the rest of the good, the bad, and the coming up in just 1 second. Wrapping it up here with Big V, Vivek Jacob, as we dive on into the good, the bad, and the from last night's Toronto Raptors game. It's a thing we liked, a thing we didn't like, and a thing that's got us a little bit intrigued, or I guess a lot bit intrigued in my case just now. The way we wrap up every single episode of this here podcast on the heels of a Toronto Raptors basketball game. I will give it to you first. What you got for your good here, Big V?
Well, owing to what's going to be your good, I figured we can roll with someone else, and I thought someone who had
pre-show planning, baby. It's important.
And I thought someone who had an understated impact in this game was Davion Mitchell. I thought, defensively, he was excellent. I thought that we've seen a bit better playmaking over the last few. I think we've seen aggression going to the basket. And I think the way he's able to use that left shoulder on drives and just like hurdle people to the ground.
Very
Legally.
much a football player.
Yeah.
As much as he's a basketball player.
Yeah. That's just, I don't know how you'd really deal with that if you're a guard. I think there's been a lot of positives with him. And I thought in this game, again, when I think about the intensity, the energy, the focus that was there, defensively, he really, really brought it.
Yeah. Yeah. The guard rotation for the the Orlando Magic, not exactly bringing the heat necessarily, but they certainly weren't able to get much going against Mitchell in this one. And those little, just like, he had a really nice stretch in the third quarter where the Raptors won the quarter 40-20 and just kind of ran away with it. Then he had a little stretch. I think he scored 5 straight points. He had a catch and shoot off of a Scottie pass, and then he just kind of drove and barreled his way to the bucket in the fashion you kind of outlined. And those little moments where, like, this is why I was always kind of pro Mitchell as like a spot up player as opposed to a guy with the ball in his hands a whole bunch, just because he does have a really quick first step. He can beat a guy off the bounce. And if he's able to knock in some threes, which to his credit, he's been doing at a pretty decent clip of late, there's an effective off-ball player there who you can live with. And I think, once Emmanuel Quickley's back, you can play in smaller 2-guard lineups, to kind of offset the defense issues that, the Quickley, Gradey, RJ trio tends to present. And it's a nice, piece to have, right? I think he's still overextended as a starter for sure, but a really nice overall effort from Davion Mitchell in this one. Nothing but flowers to be given at his feet today. My good, the chain man, Bruce Brown, gets the chain for this game, 15, 5, and 5. In particular, the stretch in the first quarter where he came in off the bench and basically ran with a full bench crew and was just like, okay, guys, let's get our shit together. It was, I thought, a really effective and sort of game turning stretch. He had like a quick 10 points there, sort of marauding in transition, getting steals, hitting threes. A really effective game from Bruce Brown. A couple of really good ones in a row here for him. And, again, we don't need to relitigate the whole thing. We know what the deal is with Bruce Brown right now. They want to trade him. They may not be able to trade him. They may have to buy him out. I wrote about it yesterday in the newsletter. I think what actually happens with him is kind of irrelevant to the overall picture of the franchise. It'd be nice to get something, and maybe they will. We'll get into that a little bit into the coming up in a second here. But I think, Yeah, Bruce Brown, a really effective one, and it's nice to see him kind of finding his groove here after looking not so hot for a while there. What you got for your bad in this one?
Yeah, bad. I mean, for me, it was Yak. Just
Yeah,
couldn't really get going. Tough. But again, it's you're bound to see nights like this in an 82 game season. I thought, matchup wise, uh, they're probably, would he have maybe preferred to go up against a Goga Batadze and a Mo
sure.
Wagner? Probably. So I think maybe there were some issues there matchup wise, and yeah, just a tough night for him.
Yeah, no doubt. I wouldn't say Wendell Carter Jr. is any great shakes necessarily. And you wish he could have a better effort against him. I also think, like, yes, Jakob Poeltl was a minus 26 in 19 minutes. That's really hard to do. And he definitely was one of the worst Raptors on the floor, if not the worst. I also didn't think it was like a notably wretched performance necessarily. He had a couple pops on offense. The foul trouble, I think, brought him down more than anything. And he just was kind of out there when the entire team was playing listless ball. And yes, he's part of that when he's on the floor, but it didn't feel necessarily like a minus 26 game from him. That said, I'm glad it was, because the ridiculous swing between him and Kelly Olynyk in this game is remarkable. Poeltl was also my bad, but I'm going to use it to dovetail into just some talk of Kelly Olynyk's on-offs in this game, because holy God, Kelly Olynyk was a plus 39 in 22 minutes, which I didn't think was necessarily possible to happen in a basketball game, but he was. And it totally swung his entire season worth of metrics too. Want some fun stats? Going into last night's game, Kelly Olynyk was a minus 1.9 on off differential guy. So the Raptors were 1.9 points worse per 100 possessions when he was on the floor versus when he was off per NBA.com. After last night, and you bake in his whole season, he is now a plus 5.3 on off differential guy. He swung it more than 7 points in his direction in one game. It went from being a negative player to a very substantial positive. That's hilarious. It's very funny stuff. The defense for the Raptors is better when he is on the floor than when he's off on the season now by about a point. The offense is better by about a point too. It's kind of insane. Shout out Kelly Olynyk. It was a really wonderful effort. In this game himself, the Raptors were a plus 61.4 net rating when he was on the floor and a minus 71.8 when he was off, for a differential of plus 133.2 over 22 minutes. Crazy, bonkers stuff. Shout out Kelly. Looking young and spry again. What you got for your to close it out?
Honestly, just watching this game, there wasn't too much to pick at.
Sure.
So I figured I would let you go first and piggyback off of
Ooh.
yours.
Oh, perfect. I thought you were going to maybe say, did you see that Ulrich Shamshay garbage time pass to AJ Lawson? But that's okay. That can be a for another day. There'll be many more cool Ulrich Shamshay passes, I'm sure. My is a trade that went down that did not involve the Toronto Raptors. That is the kind of trade that makes my blood boil, an assets for assets trade where the Suns traded their 2031 unprotected first to the Jazz for 3 first-round picks, seemingly in the lead up to a pursuit of Jimmy Butler with the Miami Heat. And there's some reporting out there from Ira Rinderman down in Miami and some other folks as well that it seems like the Raptors, Doug Smith commented on this over the weekend as well, that the Raptors could be involved as a team to sort of grease the wheels of a deal with the Suns and the Bucks, the Heat and possibly the Bucks here as well, with Bradley Beal for some reason going to Milwaukee. Sure. Okay. Whatever. And because of the salaries involved and the aprons involved and everything, the Raptors would have to jump in to kind of take on some money and make it so teams can aggregate salaries and stuff like that where they currently cannot. And it's kind of interesting. If the Raptors are able to score a little haul here and maybe Bruce Brown goes out to Miami as an expiring deal and they can get themselves back something, whether it's young players, whether it's picks, whatever it might be, it's kind of interesting. There's sort of a mock sort of tossed around idea for a trade by Brett Siegel where like the Raptors get like Pat Connaughton and Bobby Portis plus a pick or two to kind of, for their trouble of making it all work. Certainly could do worse than that. Bobby Portis seems like a fun guy to have around. He's a maniac with the biggest eyes in the world. Is he a terribly effective player anymore? Maybe not necessarily, but on this Raptors team, he would certainly be the second best big man walking in the door, most likely. And so, yeah, I'm into it. I think this is a perfectly adequate way for the Raptors to use their expiring salaries and, flexibility as a bad team that's not going anywhere to help themselves. And when it comes to asset accrual, and I'm very curious to see if they're able to pull something off there. You wanted to piggyback off of this, Big V. Piggyback away.
Man, when you look at these deals that are happening now, when you look at the teams that are best positioned, like the way picks are gonna dictate this this era, the second apron era, you have to be so on top of like that has become part of like dotting the I's, crossing the T's. And so to get back on my shoebox, this season that is happening for the Raptors, there will be a lot of frustration. There will be a lot of disappointment. Obviously, there'll be fun moments like beating the Magic, like those fun ethical losses that we saw. So enjoy those. But I do think that because of the way the cap is going to be, because of the extensions for Scottie, for Quickly, it's almost like this is something they have to do.
Sure.
Like there's just going to be so much inflexibility coming that if you can get a super high pick to complement this roster, it's almost like a no-brainer decision that you just have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it stinks because I think tanking is lame loser stuff. But if the rules are the rules and where they're at right now, I mean, look, I think they're pretty comfortably situated to be in the top 5 of the odds, which is really all you can ask for. In a flattened lottery world, you're never going to have a great shot of anything. Even if you're the number 1 team in odds, you have a 48% chance of dropping down and being in the 5th spot and a 14% chance at number 1. I think the Raptors right now, these wins are fine. And if they can go and find themselves some extra assets on the margins while also adding a very high pick, you've got the Pacers pick, you've got all your own picks in store, which they're one of only like 7 teams in the league that actually has all of their picks. They're set up pretty well. They're not the Jazz. They're not the Thunder or any of these teams that have these massive freak hordes of picks that should probably be the subject of a TLC show. But they certainly have, a lot of flexibility and wherewithal to add to the team they have right now. And last night, like we saw, it's like kind of one of those dream on it type wins where you can see the pieces coming together, how it all will fit. And then you add in whomever they can draft this year and whatever, they're able to kind of parlay all their picks into, whether it's players in the draft or trades down the line. And there is a vision of something cobbling together here, even with it having been a pretty darn rough season to watch. We're going to leave it there. Big V, thanks so much as always for hanging out. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Usual stuff, man. Raptors in 7, Sportsnet, sportscasting. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Vivek Jacob.
Sounds great. You can find me at woodleyshawn.bsky.social on the Sky. You can also find the show Instagram if you want to go do that. You can also go and support the Discord. Join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. Great place to come hang out. I'm in there so much. You just get like really one-to-one conversations with me all the time. I don't know if that's what you want, but I'm offering it. So please come and hop on in there. And of course, the newsletter, the daily Locked On Raptors newsletter. It is free. It is to your inbox. You don't have to do anything to get it. It just goes right to you. So while you're on the can, you can read my posts about the Toronto Raptors or, traveling or other things that are maybe you're like feeding your kid or something and you want to read while they're eating or something like that. All kinds of ways to consume the Locked On Raptors newsletter. But the can is really the number 1 way to do it. We'll leave you there. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you on Thursday as we bring you back with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.
Hey.